Right, hello again. So, continuing on with this Minecraft themed project for Nowhere Metaverse. So, we're building this in Blender. So, this is where we left off yesterday, or yesterday? Well, the last video. Excuse me. In the last video, so we've. Ooh, frog in throat. So, we created our initial blocks. These are our template objects that we'll use to replicate, duplicate, and create our platforms. So all we've done for this particular one, it's a snowy scene, obviously, is duplicated the snow block and duplicated that as, well, to create the platform. And we're not concerned too much about each of these being individual blocks. We don't care about that at the moment, because all that we're doing when we're doing this is just duplicating that and building up our structures. So that's what we got. That's as far as we got with in the previous stream. But so that's, what is it? How it started, how it's going. Don't save. So in the interest of brevity, because obviously you don't want to be seeing the same thing being duplicated a million times, and well, because it's kind of repetitive and boring to watch. But this is how we've how far we've got so far. So a lot of work obviously off screen, because again you don't want to be watching the repetitive placement of blocks on screen. But we've let's sort this out. Hang on, right? So everything's in there. Right, so I'm just going to create a quick. No, that's okay. Right, so collections. Let's just hide all of that for the moment. So island. Oh, and this is where Blender doesn't like. Might be a bit glitchy. I'm having problems with the previous stream. That when you select multiple blocks and want to move them, it's almost as if Blender is skipping a beat. It hangs and pauses. Excuse me. It hangs and pauses for some. This is 3.63 because the exporting tools for Nowhere Metaverse are, as far as I know, are only compatible with 3.6 LTS at present. So 4.x, I'm not sure about just yet. So the tools will only work with this, but the problem with that is that it's a little bit glitchy, although we've got snaps of the grid. Well, we did have it. It was disabled, thinking that that might have been the problem. And it might still be the problem, but I'm not quite sure. But Blender 3.6 doesn't like this many objects being on screen. And there are 823 objects. So that becomes the island. So let's just go back into deselect. So we've got our, yeah, see, it doesn't like it. Collection. Let's just move these into their own new collection. Let's just call this templates. Okay. Let's hide that. So as mentioned, these are our template blocks, and obviously we've duplicated this one to create the platform, but we've done it in a way where we've now got a bit more substance to the platform. So it's a floating island. So there is a tip or a trick, not quite sure which way. So some of these blocks have multiple materials. So this snow block, for example, has 3 material assignments. So to save time, and obvious of those 3 materials, we're using the dirt material. So if we were to duplicate one of these blocks, Shift D, move that up into place. So we need to replace this block underneath with a dirt block. Now, ordinarily what you might do is select that dirt block, duplicate that and move it into position. But because of the materials that are assigned to this block, and because it is using or referencing the dirt material, and that's for the underside, so the bottom face of this, of all these blocks, so edit mode. So as we select each face, we can see the material that's been selected in the material list. So we've got dirt snow, that's the combo. We've got snow, so that's the top face. And then the bottom face is dirt. So what that means is that what we can do in situations where we are duplicating materials, duplicating blocks, where we need to make adjustments to blocks beneath, what we can do is just select that block, and in material properties we can just remove the blocks, the material references we don't need, which leaves the dirt block behind. So we don't have to keep going back and forth selecting different blocks and copying them, duplicating and moving them into position. We can just, depending on the block again, we can just place the blocks and remove the materials. So now we've effectively got an actual dirt block, as if the dirt block itself had been duplicated and moved into position. So it saves some time. So let's just reload this. So that's one trick optimization. Oh, we'll have to recreate that. Hide. No. Create a. Make sure nothing is selected. Accept. Right, so move those. What do we call it? Template. Okay. Let's just save this file. File save as before we do anything else. 14. And there we go. It's crashed. It doesn't like that. Blender has always had problems with a lot of objects in a scene. It will render millions and millions of polygons without issue. But as soon as you start putting a lot of individual objects in a scene, it doesn't like it, never likes it. And which is ironic because of the way that Blender works. Blender works by referencing parent data and the way that that can be used to duplicate. So it's not keeping dozens and dozens and dozens of individual unique data sets in a scene like this. Well, obviously this is all connected together, but it references this one object and knows that it's being duplicated. But for some reason, even though Blender is built to work with that system or setup, it doesn't like it when you actually push it to the max. So let's hide that. Island 1. So right, we've got our platform, but of course we now have, what was it, 823 objects, and that is obviously 10,000 polygons. So that obviously means that a lot of the surfaces that are used to describe our objects are unneeded, unnecessary, because they are hidden from view. So we have to optimize this. And by optimizing, we're basically removing all the surfaces that are not going to be visible. Now we could do this all in one go, but it gets a bit clunky to work through the optimization process. So the easiest thing to do, or a more effective thing to do, is to go into side view, just make a group selection like so. Make sure one is the active object. Join them together. So where is it? Control J. Or shortcut key, yep, Control J. Edit mode. Select all, make sure everything is selected. So A or all. Mesh. So let's take a look at this actually before we do this. So let's select that. Double. Actually, let's just move this to one side so that we can see it more clearly. So we've got surfaces that butt up to one another, but they are individual blocks. So we need to get rid of some of these surfaces, but we don't want to necessarily remove all of them depending on the block type. But what we don't want is for two surfaces to be back to back or face to face. We just want one surface being shared between all the blocks, whoops, depending on what that block actually is. So what we are then doing is select all, mesh, clean up, merge by distance, or rem doubles as it used to be called. Get rid of all of those. Actually, let's just undo that. Because what we can do, we need a... Right, so I'm just going to duplicate this. Shift D. So this is the original. That is 132 triangles. So we're going to clean this one up. So select all, mesh, clean up, merge by distance. So that's lost 30 odd surfaces, faces. But now that everything is connected, then what we want to make sure is deselect, select all by trait, interior faces for this particular shape. And that will select all those surfaces that are inside that will never be seen for removal. So we can now remove those. So X, or where is it? Mesh, delete, faces. So now got down to 80. So we've gone from 132 down to 80. Now with some of the solid blocks, the dirt, that's okay, we want that. But for, and of course that then means we do the whole island like that. Come on, Blender, catch up. Yeah, it's like it skips a beat. It doesn't like... really doesn't like it. But the things like trees, so let's hide the island. We want, let's go with this section, we want the internal faces to be visible because we want to be able to see through the texture. But we don't want front and back, we don't want two sides, back to back, front to front, so we just want one surface in the center of all of this. So we do the same thing. Those two at the back. Let's just duplicate these so we have a reference. So Shift D. Join together. Yeah, it just doesn't like it. Join those together. So edit mode. So we've got 96 faces or triangles. So we'll stick with this one. So select all mesh, clean up, merge by distance. So that's dropped us down to 80. But as mentioned, we want to keep the inside surfaces. So if we actually got rid of those, we can see them through the holes in the, well, the alpha of the material. We actually want those, but if we want to get rid of them, that reduces that block down to 64. So we can optimize certain materials or certain blocks with certain materials more effectively than we can with others. Let's just undo that. There we go. But it just depends on the material and the block type. Yeah, so we've gone from 96 down to 80. It's not a huge decrease, but it's enough of a decrease that over a large scene, all of that matters. So let's just reload this. So basically that's what's been done, is just that kind of optimization. So we're joining everything together to make single units that are easy to duplicate as single unit objects rather than the individual blocks, because once we've placed everything where we need it to be, that's all we need really, and then we can just combine everything into a single object. So let's just reload 14. And that is how this has been done. So once we've got our blocks in place, we just join them together and optimize. So for the platform, we go from 10,000 down to 2,500. And it doesn't matter which blocks we use, we can swap out certain blocks. And of course we want to carry on the theme. And similarly, we do the same thing with blocks on top of blocks. We need to remove the snow. So all we're doing initially, before we join everything, is just removing the materials that are unneeded so that we get back to the root or core block type. But of course, once we join everything together, we then have all the materials that are being used on the entire object. So that's how it's going. So we go from blocks to our structures. We then combine everything to optimize our structures. And then once we've got our structures like trees, we can just duplicate those as much as we want. So next step is to add some, one thing that's missing from this is some grass. Not this grass, the standing, the stuff that sticks up. So let's load in append from a previous scene that we've done. Right, so should have some blocks somewhere. Double click, object, need to go back further. Let's try that one. Object. Oh, and of course they're all using the default. Hang on then. Need to open up another instance of Blender. And open up file, open. Right, so what we can do here instead of, so this is a previous Minecraft scene, so what we can do here is let's get one that's closest to the origin point. So there we go. Copy that. Control C. Come on, edge of screen. There we go. Control V. And it'll drop it into place. So select item 0, 0, 0. Camera focus. Adjust its height, remembering that it's two crossed planes. Shift. There we go. So it's to get the texture to work correctly on the grass. We've got two planes that are back to back, so that we have the alpha displaying correctly in nowhere, and more importantly for the shading to be working correctly. So there's a whole where did I put it? I think there's a should be a tutorial on this somewhere. Nowhere. Because what we want to, with something like this, if you do grass the normal way that you would do it, so you just cross planes and then make them two-sided. That's the normal way you'd do it. But if you make them two-sided, what will happen is that the front side and the back side, hang on, nowhere. The front side and the back side will be lit the same, because basically what the engine, well, it's blended as this just as much as anything else, but if there's a light source coming from this direction, it means that this side is going to be well lit, whereas this side should be shaded because it's obviously behind the light source. So if you just do the standard way of making your material two-sided, what you'll end up with is the back side of your mesh being incorrectly lit relative to the scene and the source of light. So the way to avoid that is just to duplicate the plane and make it single-sided, the material, and then flip, mesh, normals, flip the normals so one side is facing backwards essentially, so you end up with a front plane and a back plane, and you do that for both sides, and that ensures that your objects, your sprites, are correctly lit. But what we may need to do with this is adjust the textures a little bit. Nowhere room prep, nowhere entities. Whilst that's opening, so we've got nowhere. So that's the mesh prep. Dropping these links in chat. The same one. Could have sworn I had something about it. Yeah, two-sided meshes, there we go. So two-sided meshes. Two-sided meshes. So that discusses why isn't that going to Rumble? Are we playing on Rumble? Stop advert. Where is the Hang on. Try to find something on Rumble. Where's Rumble Studio where you go to edit your... Can you not edit videos whilst you're streaming on Rumble? Ah. That's a bit... that's a feature deficit. So if you're streaming using a third-party service like OBS and streaming to Rumble, it doesn't seem that you can, like with YouTube or Twitch, you can obviously edit the stream live whilst it's happening. But you can't do that with Rumble yet. Anyway, so poop. Right, so social... No winter. So we want our grass. So we made some adjustments to the textures as well, offline. So that's the basically the meadow grass for the normal biome, but we just darkened it and made it a slightly bluish color for the winter biome. But what we can do here is we can use this. So let's find the original. So that's the original short grass. Let's see if this will work. Grass B. So center. So we've just dropped in, which one is it? We've just dropped in the winter biome grass over the top of the... It's just... Well, let's try... Yeah, that works. That'll work. So save as winter short grass. Export. 16x16. Export. Short grass winter. PNG. So what we can do now is replace that with our winter. So where are we? Shading. Let's just... We don't need this anymore. Well, no. Might come back to this and maybe at a later point use some of these assets as well. Because we've got a... Because what we eventually want to be doing is dropping in. So if we just take a look at this one quickly. So where was open? So that's the parts, export. So what we'll eventually want to be doing is... Oh, no, that's the wrong one. Is it that one? I think it's that one. No, that's the test scene. Where's the... Yeah, so eventually what we want to be able to do is drop in the nowhere specific entities. And of course, these are all invisible elements in terms of what the user sees. They'll see a screen or an area that's dedicated as a screen, but the admin for the room will put a link to a YouTube video or something like that there. But there are interactive blocks and objects that are completely invisible, so you obviously need a prompt of some kind. And that can be done just by using, let's just make this bounce. That can be done by just dropping in a signpost that indicates there's something there which can be clicked, which activates the trigger that's around the signpost. So we just want some of those. So we might come back and use some of these to enable us to drop in some visual prompts. But that was the previous Minecraft scene. So it had a little portal gateway, which surrounds the actual portal entity that Nowhere provides, that will then teleport you, air quotes. It'll send you to a new room or link or something, depending on what you are targeting. But we'll bring in some of these maybe. Right, so we don't need that, so close that. Right, so replacing this, shading. There's our grass. Short grass. Open image. So it's going to where that image is stored, so we want to go to winter short grass. That's going to be replaced. So that's what we've got. So now it's obviously then using the same alpha, and of course make sure that you have backface culling and alpha clip set. But that's now essentially color coordinated with all the other bits. So the one thing about the grass though is the origin is obviously in the center of the grass. But the position of the grass should be in the center of a block. So we just need to readjust that before we start duplicating it. So that's our grass. So now we can start dropping that all over the place. Make sure that it's in templates. Select, duplicate. Move that into position. That looks a bit big actually. Let's go down to 1. That looks about right. Change the scaling, so just need to reset that so that object, apply, rotation scale. Right, so we'll leave that in its altered scaling just for the sake of reference, but now what we need to do is duplicate. So, oh hang on, we need to, what? Yep. Okay, Shift E. Shift D. I'm going to enable auto snap and hope that that's not causing the problem with it. I have a feeling this is going to crash. Save. Oh. Shame can't pick stock prices with the same degree of forebodance. Yeah, because the actual grass blocks in Minecraft don't occupy a full block. They're a little bit smaller than an actual... I mean, obviously there are two. There's the tall grass and the short grass, but... Oh, and it's the same for the trees. So obviously we don't want trees sitting on snowy blocks. So we do the same thing we did before, what we were talking about before. We just remove the snow side and the snow top so that we just get dirt blocks under trees. But all of these assets are all hand painted. There are lots of, I think there must be about half a dozen now, half a dozen video tutorials on painting these textures in Blender itself. So you don't necessarily need to use Photoshop or an image editor. You can do them directly in Blender. But we might have to do, because the winter biome has the fern texture, I think, amongst other things. So that'll do for our grass. Save again. So what we've got also is a little pit here. So we can either do water or lava, but what we can also do, let's change that, that should be changed. Those two should be changed to dirt. What we can do is, because we've got a little channel here, so what we can do is have water or lava just pouring off the side, so that we end up with a little water or lava fall, and then maybe it flows around this side as well and just maybe stops here like it does. So that's something that actually, let's do that. Let's paint. I'll paint the texture, and we'll do a lava texture. So we want a 16 by 16. And let me think how I want to do this. Right, so exit edit mode, object mode. What are our blocks? We've got our blocks. So that's our template object. So remember, we create a template object with all the correct UV mapping and everything set up the way that the blocks should be, where the blocks need to be set up in order for them to appear correctly. Then all we do is just duplicate that one block to create all our other blocks. So click. What we're going to do here then is, let's just hide the collection. Grab our grass, dump that in the collection. So there's our block. I'll call this lava. Wireframe is disabled, that's okay. Right, so, material. So we've got a instanced copy of the original. So we've got our duplicate. So we'll click on that to make it unique. Lava. Click the shield just to make sure that it doesn't self-remove. And then in shading workspace, we just set up our image. So uncouple that. Add image texture. Image texture. Want a new one. So lava. 16 by 16 pixels. UV grid for now. Okay. Link that up. So it's gone grey because the obviously 16 by 16 is too small to show the black and white grid that we would normally get. But now that we've got that in place, we can go into texture paint. Make sure that we switch to material preview so we are looking at our image correctly. And then all we need to do is paint. So there's our color swatch. So we want this reddish color, or this orangey pinkish kind of color. Just slap that everywhere. And of course, because the cube is set up correctly relative to what we actually want the textures to look like on the cube, when we just paint our cube, the texture automatically appears the way that it should. Might have to take a look at the Minecraft texture in game at some point, but this will do for now. Yeah, I think we're going to have to take a look at the original and see how they've done theirs. Oh, one thing we didn't do. So you note how that texture is blurry because base color. We need to set the interpolation mode. Linear is the default. We want closest. And there we go, we get our pixels. Bit too busy, but that'll do for now. That will be our lava texture for now. We'll take a look at the actual thing in game offline and maybe repaint it. Whoops. But 16 by 16 pixels, these are really easy to paint in Blender, so you don't need to have Photoshop or any other image editor. So that's our texture painted. So image, save as lava PNG, that's okay. So if we're going to use PNG, just disable compression, just so that you are saving as much raw data as possible. PNG bros, just don't bother arguing with this. Disable that, and then that's it, or use a lossless. And save as image. So that is now our lava block. Now if we wanted to create a... No, it doesn't do that in game. I don't think... I mean, this emits light, but it doesn't shine and shade in game. So we don't necessarily need to create a, you know, like a specular effect, because Minecraft obviously doesn't have that unless you have the texture packs in place. So we can disable all of that, and that will be our lava texture that in the next stream we'll make a little lava pool and a lava waterfall in here, and have that flowing. So we'll have to create an animated texture. Not quite sure if we can do that in Nowhere, but we'll take a look at that. Flowing off the edge and maybe just stopping here. Let's see if we can set up some sort of emission or illumination just for Blender, because let's just go into rendered. So in the sunlight, hang on, let's just save this before it crashes again. 17. So if we can set this up with emission, proper emission, it'll, let's just drop a quick light in here. There's the lights, point light, Where's the point light gone? It's all the way over here. Let's just stick that there for now. Color 100, 500. We can see how that would illuminate the scene or add additional lighting. I don't know if this will transfer across into nowhere, so it might be worth doing that just for the sake of trying it, but a texture that emits light. So that's what we'll do in the next stream. Right, we'll call it quits here. Trying to keep these as watch friendly as possible, so an hour minimum, 2 hours max, because people's time is precious and not everyone has the time to be able to watch multi-hour streams. Right, so we'll call it quits there. Let's just save that again for file save. And we'll see you on the next stream where we shall continue with this. There's going to be other islands, so it's not just this island. Not quite sure where to put them yet and how to connect them. Might try doing something with these fallen logs, but we'll see. Right, call it quits there and save. And we shall see you on the next stream. So thanks for watching, lurkers, and bye for now.